Shares of Facebook are down 13% over the past month as the fallout from the Facebook whistleblower continues. At Frances Haugen's Senate testimony, Democrat from Connecticut Richard Blumenthal said Facebook knows its products have harmed teenagers and compared the company's handling of its own research to another high-profile controversy in the 90s.
This research is the very definition of a bombshell. Facebook and big tech are facing a big tobacco moment. A moment of reckoning.
And just breaking in the last few minutes, the Facebook Oversight Board says they will meet with the whistleblower. So what's the biggest risk to Facebook now? Regulation from lawmakers or litigation from maybe users claiming damages? Policy analyst Blair Levin of New Street Research says it's litigation, and it could lead to the public having a negative perception of the company if they don't already. He joins me now. Blair, it's great to have you. I think this is a very important piece because we talk in the marketplace all the time about whether regulation would actually hurt Facebook or could actually help it because it tends to favor the incumbents, or if you break it up, that could reward shareholders. Tell me what the litigation path could look like.
Well, the litigation path can come from a number of different directions. There can be private attorneys who somehow figure out how to sue them on behalf of large classes of individuals. It could come from the FTC arguing that it violates basic consumer protections. It can come from state attorney generals who have a number of different laws and rules. But the key thing in my own analysis is that the path of litigation, there are a couple of things I think are important for investors to understand. Number one, it's backwards looking. And so you're really focused on the harm as opposed to kind of the difficult trade-offs in policy that legislation involves. And so that'll be a kind of a daily reminder of the problems. And the second thing is when you're doing litigation, Facebook is by itself. You know, a lot of public policy is a team sport. If you're lobbying on legislation, Facebook and Google and maybe and a bunch of others are kind of on the same team. But when it's litigation, you're by yourself.
That's a really interesting point. So they'd be by themselves. It would be all about the harm. And from the precedents of big tobacco, but also opioids, as you mentioned, I mean, these were kind of devastating to these companies. Now, in both of those cases, no one was shedding tears for the demise of cigarettes or opioids. But in Facebook's case, I was using the Buy Nothing page last week, Blair, to get rid of some baby gear so that someone else in my neighborhood could use it. What do you think society wants in terms of, if we go down the litigation path, how bad it could get for Facebook?
Yeah, I think, look, the framework is similar. A large company knows that it's causing some harm, and instead of acting quickly to mitigate that harm, doesn't do so, arguably, and these are just the allegations, I don't really know the truth, but arguably acts to, in fact, accelerate the harm. So that's kind of the framework. But of course, the facts and the damages are quite different. But I think it could be very difficult for Facebook. I think what the public wants is, number one, protect the kids. I mean, I think that was, to me, from a political perspective, the big thing that happened as compared to like Cambridge Analytica, where you were dampening it, you were hurting democracy, but it's not clear that everybody cares about democracy. It is clear that everybody cares about kids. So I think that's the single most important thing. Then the second thing is, I think there are certain kinds of changes in behavior. For some, it's about transparency. For some, it's about privacy. For some, it's about opening up to more competition. But I think, you know, the tobacco litigation is known for producing tens of billions of dollars for the states. I don't know that we're talking about those kinds of damages, but the tobacco litigation also resulted in certain kind of behavioral changes.
Right.
And I think a bunch of state attorney generals might achieve that much faster than the United States Congress.
Well, and we've started, obviously, to see some piecemeal efforts there already, but I think you really provided a big, comprehensive picture of what this could look like. Blair, thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Blair Levin of New Street Research.